Hi. We're doing the Batman, baby!
Musical styles are still a very important form of communication for our young people. Hi, I'm Joe Feinstein.
Obviously, any Batman film is going to attract some big actors, and this was certainly no exception. Robert Pattinson, Jeffrey Wright, Zoe Kravitz, Colin Farrell, Paul Dano, John Turturro, Andy Serkis, veterans one and all. They came together, took in and absorbed their characters, bringing in their own flair, and as a result, gave us an outstanding set of performances, really drawing us into the story. That much should be recognized and appreciated. But there's someone else who I think deserves special praise and examination. With the exception of Adam West, Batman has always been a very dark and brooding character, but when you ask the man who directed both Let Me In and the Planet of the Apes trilogy, you should know from the jump you're going to be in for one hell of a time. Matt Reeves, who I'm going to be spending a lot of time praising in this episode, pulled from a myriad of source material to ensure that his version of Batman stood out and stood tall amongst the rest. Now, I'll refer you to Screen Crush and Heavy Spoilers if you're looking for a list of comic influences, because I more so want to get into the emotional side of how they handled the film's creation. During his interview with the American Film Institute, Matt Reeve says,
I always like the idea in the Hitchcockian way of putting yourself in the shoes of someone and watching them do things that you'd like to think you would never do, and say, God, in that circumstance, might I do it?
Right.
And it taps into those parts of you to say, okay, so what drives people to the edges, to the darkness of what they do? And so I just think that there's something about that kind of storytelling that, for me, that empathetic, subjective storytelling is what cinema means to me.
Personally, I think that's the perfect approach to have with a Batman story. So often in other films, we're focused on Batman's gadgets, his quips, and his righteous stance against killing, but rarely have we gotten any time with Bruce and his emotional state. We've never truly gotten a Bruce that was this unsure of himself and blinded by a rage he didn't fully understand. In the film, one of the first things Bruce says about himself is,
I wish I could say I'm making a difference, but I don't know. Murder, robberies, assault. 2 years later, they're all up. The city's eating itself. Maybe it's beyond saving.
Which, if you weren't paying close enough attention during the opening TV debate, Miss Raul flat out tells us.
Crime has skyrocketed. Murder and drug use are at historic highs. We have a masked vigilante running the street.
His head gets even more turned around when he learns about his parents' past. Seeing him react and immediately lash out at Alfred is proof positive that Bruce is still just a kid. Sure, he may have a few cool gadgets, and he may be clever enough to keep up with the Riddler and to build a souped-up car, but he hasn't actually grown up yet. He spent so long isolated and in his own head that he hasn't been able to think larger. It's further proven when he makes snap judgments about Selina. But because of Reeves' empathetic, subjective approach, we still understand where Bruce is coming from and ultimately don't blame him too much for it. The same could be said for most of the characters. Selina is involved in a lot of shady stuff, but she's also been borderline forced into that life with her upbringing and her relationships. Oz is a drug pusher, murderer, and gangster, but you do also see how he's treated by those above him, and you understand that he just really wants to be respected and understood at the end of the day. You can even come to empathize with the Riddler to a degree. Yeah, he's an insane murderer who has chosen this violent path, but between the journal entry Gordon reads aloud in the crime scene late in the film and the monologue that the Riddler himself gives in Arkham, you come to fully understand why he snapped the way he did and why he's doing what he's doing. Also, while I'm briefly talking about the Riddler, regardless of how you may feel about this particular portrayal of the villain, you cannot deny that these goons are arguably the most believable set of goons we've gotten in a Batman film. So often, we just get these weird goons who just hang out with the villain just because. There's very little to no explanation as to why these guys are there.
I'm looking at you, Mr. Freeze.
Bam! Got him.
But I appreciate that we're actually shown that they believe as Riddler does, and that they have the tools, brains, and pooled knowledge to be able to carry out the remainder of Riddler's plan. Now, outside of ensuring that the emotional side of the characters were present, Reeves also set out to pay homage to noir and detective tales. He makes a rather interesting comparison during his interview with The Ringer.
In my mind, there were references that were like Watergate. You know, we were doing stuff that there's a way in which I see Batman and Gordon as being Woodward and Bernstein, and that they're on the trail of trying to understand where this corruption is and how this sort of corruption leads all the way to the top and how all of that works.
Reeves and his team put a mountain of work in to ensure that his Gotham setting had that eerie, dangerous, mysterious tone that you often find in the noir genre. That feeling of danger around every alley, the nervous anticipation every time a door is about to be opened. Films like All the President's Men, Chinatown, and Seven all have that same tone, and it's that tone that Reeves wanted to make sure came across here as well. He insisted on having as much time with Batman and Gordon as he could, because he wants to put you in their shoes as they work as fast as they can to solve the case. Even during scenes in public with a lot of people, shots seem very intimate and damn near claustrophobic. When characters get close up, you always know what's going on in their head. And they made the rain a constant present, both to give the world a more bleak and mysterious vibe, but also to foreshadow the flood at the end. Honestly, a lot of what I love about this film comes down to some of the smaller things that you really don't think about on your first time viewing. The way they have a mounted camera every time Bruce is using a vehicle or moving fast. The way they shot the Batmobile reveal as a monster coming out of the darkness. The way Bruce still instinctively walks in his Batman stance just after he gets out of his suit. Or the fact that the only thing we see Bruce eat in this film is a berry, which is a weird, sly nod to the fact that bats like fruit. So, to wrap up the good things I appreciated about this film and Reeves as a director, I'd like to share one more gem he gave later in his interview with Ringer.
You can't take on a Batman movie without being aware that there have been great Batman films. What you do is you say, okay, can I bring something new to it? Can we do something different? Like, of course, you have to give the audience, there are certain expectations you have to fulfill. You can't not have an immersive, propulsive, somehow startling, great Batmobile chase. So I knew we had to try to do that. But I knew that that wouldn't be enough. That if you couldn't find a way, after there being so many iterations, you also have to prove to an audience that there's a reason to revisit this.
That right there is the kind of thought process and approach more filmmakers should have. Understand the material you're working with, understand what fans have come to love about what came before, and give them a reason to revisit that character and explore a new angle with them. It's that kind of approach that keeps franchises going strong and keeps your fans wanting more. I can't wait to see what Reeves has in store for us with the sequel, even if it is about the Clayface the way a lot of these recent rumors have been suggesting. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure Reeves can make Clayface work, but I just personally think there are far more interesting Batman villains that we could tackle. But I highly recommend checking out all of Reeves' interviews as well as the HBO behind the scenes video. I promise it's really going to elevate your rewatch of this film. Now, as much as I love this film, I did have one major complaint, and it was something I was going to discuss to wrap this video up. However, when I reached out to a fellow content creator to collaborate on this video, it turns out he had the exact same complaint. So, being far more skilled and eloquent than I, let's let the great MontyZander himself explain, shall we?
If Ra's al Ghul, Liam Neeson's character from Batman Begins, made a movie about Gotham, it would look like The Batman. I like this film for a lot of reasons, but on a second viewing I have some problems with it. Robert Pattinson's hair is one of them. I just want to push it out of his face. Alfred is dying, bro. The least you could do is comb your hair. Catwoman's makeup is another. Is she crying in every scene, or is that just glitter? I'm suddenly beginning to realize that I care too much about the hair and makeup of this superhero film. But my biggest problem with The Batman is that I don't care about its Gotham. It's beautifully shot and lit, and using the Gothic architecture of Glasgow was a brilliant idea to reinforce how it's locked firmly in the past, unable to move on from its diseased history. But despite being a 3-hour film, I don't care about its people. The Batman gives us a Gotham that doesn't convince us that it should be saved. We don't get inspired by its people. The only inspiring moment is at the very end, when Bats evolves from a vigilante into a hero. That evolution is convincing and captivating, but I care about his growth more than I care about him saving Gotham's people. There's no scene where we see Gothamites be noble or good or sympathetic like the ferry standoff in The Dark Knight, or Joffrey looking whimsically up at his hero in Batman Begins. They don't even help one another at the end. They wait for Batman to do all of the work for them. He should be a boost to the goodness that we see flicker in Gotham throughout the film. Instead, the film gives us Ra's al Ghul's view of Gotham, a city beyond saving. It opens with a dark, dirty night in the city where we watch as criminals trash stores or mug people. This is effective because it shows us why Batman is needed. Things are bad in Gotham, the worst they've ever been. But over the course of 3 hours, we never see an alternative to that. We never see someone that we want Batman to rescue. We never see the Gothamites try to help themselves. Oh sure, Jim Gordon is great, Alfred gives us the heart, and Catwoman steals the show, but through dint of being our main cast, we care about them anyway, separate from the city of Gotham. We have Bella Real, but she doesn't do anything meaningful aside from give a couple of political speeches. Aside from Batman, we don't see a single Gothamite help or inspire people. We don't see someone try to prevent a mugging. We don't even watch them help each other when the city is drowned. So when Riddler decides to set off his bombs, there's no reason to care. Sure, flood Gotham. Place is a shithole anyway. That's my 2 cents anyway. When we get a sequel, I hope Matt Reeves is open to giving us flickers of Gotham's wider populace, even if they're just brief. I hope he gives us a reason to care.
See? I couldn't have said it better myself. A huge thanks to Monty for agreeing to come on to the show. I cannot recommend his content enough. I've watched him for a while now. He has a fantastic side channel called Lore Dump, where he and his friends break down game stories in a fun, free-form discussion format, as well as his main MontyZander channel, where he gives in-depth game critiques, most recently tackling the Batman Arkham series. Links to both of those channels are going to be listed below, so please go check him out and give him some love, and tell him I sent you. And as always, I'm curious. What do you think?
Musical styles are still a very important form of communication for our young people. Hi, I'm Joe Feinstein.